The marriage had been celebrated with grandeur, silk drapes, chandeliers, crystal glasses filled to the brim with champagne. Yet, for you, it felt like a funeral of freedom. The world congratulated you on becoming Mrs. Joan Jungkook, wife of the most feared mafia leader, but no one noticed how your smile didn't reach your eyes, or how his hands never once tightened around yours during the ceremony. The first nights in the mansion taught you quickly there was no warmth in his union. His room, though you shared, it was colder than marble. He slept on his side of the bed, his back to you, the distance between your bodies stretching like a canyon. Not once did he attempt to speak, not once did he ask if you were comfortable. The days were not any different. At breakfast, you would sit opposite him, the golden morning light filtering through tall windows. The table was long, filled with food. The staff worked tirelessly to prepare. You would carefully place toast on your plate, pour juice, and try to break the unbearable silence. Do you want some coffee? I can pour it for you. Jungkook didn't even glance up from his tablet. His deep voice was clipped, uninterested. The maid can do it. Your hand froze midair, the porcelain jug suddenly heavy. You forced a small smile, placing it back as quickly as possible, and in the morning you tried again, hoping maybe he would soften with time. Your tie isn't straight. Do you want me to? Chunguk lowered the newspaper, his sharp gaze enough to cut through your words. Don't touch my things. The rejection was quiet but final. You swallowed hard, the humiliation burning your cheeks. You were not his wife, you were simply an intruder in his space. When his men came over for meetings, the difference in how he treated them versus you was stark. One evening, he stepped into his study carrying a tray of tea. His men nodded respectfully, murmuring a polite good morning, Mrs. Jones, but Jungkook's reaction was brutal in its indifference. Boss should be boss. Jungkook's jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the map sprawled across his desk. No, don't mind her. Continue. It was as if you were not even human, just a shadow passing through. You set the tray down carefully, your throat tight, and slipped out before the embarrassment could fully consume you. The nights were the hardest. You would hear the low rumble of his voice over the phone at ungodly hours, his tone commanding, dangerous. Sometimes he would leave without a word, the roar of his black car echoing through the empty driveway. One night, you finally gathered the courage to confront him. He was buttoning up his black shirt, the sleeves rolled to his elbows, veins prominent against his pale skin. It's midnight, Jungkook. Where are you going? He didn't pause, didn't even raise his head to meet your gaze. Business? You can't even tell me where. I'm your wife, not a stranger. This time he looked at you, his eyes were cold, void of any warmth, his tone laced with irritation. Don't mistake this marriage for something it's not. You don't need to know where I go or what I do. Just stay out of my way. Your heart clenched at his words. He grabbed his coat and brushed past you, leaving only the faint scent of his cologne behind as the door slammed shut. That night, laying awake in the vast, empty bed, you realized the truth. To him, you were not a wife, you were a chain he was forced to drag along, a presence he refused to acknowledge. About the cruelest part, he didn't even try to hide it. Days split into weeks, and though you told yourself to adjust, the sting of his coldness never dulled. The mansion, vast and decorated like a palace, only amplified your solitude. Every night you moved through its halls like a ghost, the echoes of your footsteps, the only company you had. You tried to create a scene of normalcy, setting the dining table for two, just like a real wife would. You would carefully arrange the plates, lay the silverware neatly, and even ask the chef to prepare his favorite dishes, though you were not sure if he even noticed. But the chair across from you was almost always empty. One evening, he sat at the long dining table, staring at the untouched plate you had fixed for him. The warmth of the food slowly faded, replaced with the chill of disappointment. You found yourself whispering softly, almost like you were convincing yourself. Maybe tonight, maybe he will come. But the grandfather clock struck past 9, then 10, and reality sank in. He was eating alone again if he was eating at all. You sighed, pushing the plate away, your appetite gone. Another night, determined not to give up so easily, you decided to bring dinner directly to his study. Balancing the tray in your hands, you walked in quietly, the soft clink of porcelain filling the silence. Jungkook was seated at his desk, sleeves rolled up, his eyes scanning a stack of documents with the sharp focus of a predator. He didn't even look up when you entered. You placed the tray down gently, trying to sound cheerful. You have been working all day. I thought you should eat something before it gets cold. For the briefest moment, you hoped he might soften, but without lifting his gaze, his reply was firm, cold. Leave it there, I'll eat later. You hesitated, clutching the edge of the tray. It will taste better if you eat now. I can wait. That was when his pen clattered onto the desk, his jaw tightening. He finally looked at you, and the intensity of his glare made you just tighten. Don't hover around me, Wine. I don't need you to take care of me. The word struck deeper than he probably intended. Your lips parted, but no reply came out. You only nodded faintly, swallowing the ache in your throat. With careful steps, you picked up the tray and turned away. Your eyes stinging, though you refused to let the tears fall. Later that week, you tried something simpler, a cup of coffee, his favorite, brewed exactly the way he liked it. You carried it to the study, the steam curling in the air, the bitter aroma filling the room. I thought you might need this. He didn't even look at the cup. His attention remained locked on the glowing laptop screen. I already had one. Your fingers tightened around the porcelain handle. You wanted to tell him that no, you'd been in the kitchen all morning and he hadn't had coffee. You wanted to argue, to push back against the wall he had built, but instead you quietly set it down on the corner of his desk and walked away. Behind you, his pen scratched against paper again, as though your presence had never existed. And slowly, that truth began to sink in. No matter how much effort you made, you were invisible to him. The morning began quietly, the kind of silence that lingered in the air like an unspoken warning. You had decided against your better judgment to try again. He'd been locked away in his study for hours, the faint scratching of pens and the occasional rustle of papers seeping through the heavy wooden door. You brewed a fresh cup of coffee, dark, strong, just the way he preferred. Balancing the cup carefully on a tray, you walked toward his study. A part of you hoped he might at least take it without a cold remark, that maybe this small gesture would soften the walls he kept building between you. The door creaked open. Jungkook was seated at his desk, papers scattered before him in organized chaos. His sharp gaze didn't lift as you stepped inside. I thought you might need this. You have been working all morning. You set the cup down gently, right beside his hand, but fate can be cruel. Your sleeve brushed the cup as you pulled back, and in an instant, the steaming liquid dipped, coffee spread across the table like a dark floor seeping into the papers beneath. Important documents, contracts stamped with red seals, maps, signatures, all stayed in seconds. Your heart stopped. Oh my god, Jungkook, I didn't mean. The sound of his chair scraping back was stiffening. He shot to his feet, his palm slamming against the desk with such force that the cup toppled entirely, spilling the last drops of its contents. Do you even realize what you have done? His voice was thunder echoing through the walls, raw with fury. You flinched, frozen in place, as his icy eyes burned into yours. These were not just papers, Wine. Do you have any idea how important this deal was? You opened your mouth, desperate to explain, but the words tangled in your throat. I didn't mean to. I was only trying to. He cut you off, his tone sharper than a blade. Always in the way, always a burden. You ruin everything you touch. His words pierced deeper than any bullet. Your chest tightened, your eyes stung, but the cruelty didn't stop there. He leaned forward, his voice low. Little, I regret ever marrying you. Silence fell like a shroud after those words. Your breath caught, your heart shattering into pieces, too sharp to hold. You stood rooted to the spot, your hands trembling at your sides. For a moment, you thought you saw something flicker in his gaze. Remorse, hesitation, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the familiar frost. He snatched the ruined papers into his hands, cursing under his breath, already turning his back on you. You swallowed the lump in your throat, forcing your tears back. Something inside you shifted, then not brokenness, not weakness, but a quiet resolve. If he wanted you to be invisible, you would give him exactly that. Without a word, you turned and walked out, your footsteps already despite the storm raging in your chest. The sting of his words, I regret our marrying you, lingered long after the coffee had dried and the documents had been replaced. But instead of falling apart, something inside you hardened. You refused to shed tears where he could see them, refused to give him the satisfaction of watching you crumble. So you began to change. At dinner, you no longer set the table for two. You asked the staff to serve your plate alone, quietly finishing your meal without waiting for the sound of his footsteps. The chair at the other end of the table remained empty, and you no longer cared. When he came home late, you no longer rushed to the hallway to greet him. No questions about where he had been, no soft attempts at conversation. The house might as well have been split into two words. His cold and untouchable, and yours silent but dignified. Even the little things changed. We stopped brewing his coffee in the mornings, stopped straightening his tie, stopped lingering at the study door with quiet hopes he would let you in. Instead, you kept to yourself, finding solace in small, unexpected places. One afternoon, you sat in the garden with Mina, one of the maids who had grown fond of you. She laughed softly at something you said, her voice carrying lightly through the air. For the first time in weeks, you laughed to a real laugh, not the brittle ones you used to force. Unbeknownst to you, Jungkook had returned earlier than usual. He stood at the balcony watching silently. His jaw tightened at the sight of you smiling at someone else, someone who wasn't him. The sound of your laughter, once non existent in his presence, gnawed at him in ways he didn't understand. Later that evening, he found you walking through the corridor, your head lowered as you carried a book. He stopped in his tracks, expecting you to notice him, to offer at least a polite greeting, but you brushed past him without a word, as though he were nothing more than a shadow. His brows furrowed, irritation flickering in his eyes. You are quiet these days. Your steps paused for a moment, but you didn't turn to face him. Maybe I finally learned how to stay out of your way. The calmness in your voice unsettled him. He had expected defiance, tears, maybe even anger, but not this. This quiet dignity of yours was something he hadn't prepared for. Over the following days, he began to notice more. How you no longer looked up from your book when he entered the room, how you no longer bothered setting aside meals for him, how your silence filled the air heavier than words ever could. And though he never admitted it aloud, the absence of your attention began to bother him. At first, Jungkook told himself your silence didn't matter, that he preferred the quiet, that your absence from his routines was a relief. But the truth had a cruel way of clawing into his chest when he least expected it. It was in the small moments. One evening, he came home early, only to find the dining table set for one your plate already cleared away, no trace of you waiting like before. He glanced around, unsettled by the emptiness. Another time, he caught the Sound of your laughter drifting from the garden. You sat on the stone bench, a book in hand, smiling at something Mina, the maid, had said. The sound was light, genuine, free, and what struck him most was that he couldn't remember the last time you had laughed like that in his presence. Jealousy twisted in his chest, sharp and unfamiliar, his fists clenched at his sides, as he realized that the warmth he had so easily rejected was now being shared with others. Days stretched into weeks, and the wall between you only grew higher. You didn't speak unless necessary, didn't look for him, didn't seek him out, and for the first time, Jungkook began to feel the void he had created. One night, long past midnight, he stood in the doorway of your room. You sat by the window, the moonlight painting your face in silver. You didn't look up when he entered. Why? His voice was softer than you had ever heard it. It caught you off guard, but you didn't let it show. You continued flipping through the pages of your book, ignoring the heaviness in his tone. He stepped closer, the shadows clinging to him for a moment. He simply watched you, the guilt in his eyes unmistakable. I shouldn't have said those things that day. I was angry. I didn't mean it. Your fingers froze on the page. His words replayed in your mind. Those cruel, unforgettable words. I regret ever marrying you. They had cut deep, carving wounds that had yet to heal. You closed the book slowly, finally lifting your gaze to meet his. Your eyes were calm, but there was steel in your voice. And you think an apology erases everything. You think I'll just forget the way you humiliated me, the way you made me feel worthless in my own home. He flinched at your words, his jaw tightening, his shoulders tense. For the first time, John Jungkook, the man who commanded entire syndicates without fear, looked uncertain. I know I hurt you. I regret it, Wine. I regret every word. You rose from your seat, standing tall before him. The moonlight glimmered in your eyes, fierce and unyielding. Regret isn't enough. Words are not enough. If you want my forgiveness, you paused, letting the weight of your silence settle on him, then earn it. The finality in your tone left him speechless. He had expected resistance, perhaps anger, but not this quiet strength. For once, Jungkook had no command, no defense, no cold mask to hide behind. As you brushed past him and walked out of the room, he stood frozen, the echo of your words reverberating in the empty silence. For the first time, the man who had always controlled everything realized he might lose the one thing he had taken most for granted you.